Hi, and welcome to TalentED, where we're going to share some stories and insights from professionals making a difference in their fields. And today is the first time TalentED is going international, which I'm super excited about. Today we have a special guest who's going to discuss some stuff around bias. And I'm going to be introducing today Tanya Obeng, former teacher turned psychodrama therapist, passionate about transforming education and workplace environments. And Tanya has a unique perspective that she's gained. She founded Lifted and Gifted Education, elevating creative thinking and implementing innovative teaching methods. Now she's focusing on leaders through bespoke programs, enhancing communication and combating absenteeism, anxiety, burnout. Super excited to have Tanya with us today. Tanya, welcome to TalentED, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, it's so lovely to be here. So thank you very much for having me on your show and having this vlog. Yes. So you know what you said a thing about me really. You know, I'm a communication consultant at the moment, but when I say communication, it's about better communication in the school in terms of interaction. So communicating by being emotionally intelligent and connecting with your students and connecting with your staff members and being able to pick up biases so you can make sure everybody's comfortable and everybody's inclusive and there's a diversity within, well, schools are diverse as we know, but there's a diversity within every school and there's an understanding of the diversity as well. And that's kind of what Communication Doctor's all about. And that's what my focus has been in the last 4 years, I would say.
Yeah, that's such an important topic right now too, in making sure that we are feeling inclusive and really doing the heavy work in our schools. And our words matter. Words matter, and how we speak to our staff members, our teachers, our students, because we convey information, whether it's explicit or implicit in what we talk about. So let's talk about this idea of unconscious bias. You have a lot of information on this. When we're talking about teachers and senior leaders and educational leaders, how do we help them become more aware of their unconscious bias when it comes to interacting with people?
Well, I'm going to go back to what you just said about communication, because I think one thing I didn't say, which I'd like to say and add to what I said, was communication is more than just words. And there is that level of emotional intelligence. And I think that links onto the question that you just asked me in terms of how do we communicate better and with regards to unconscious bias. And it's being aware and having that emotional intelligence when we're communicating. And it's being able to spot things. I think when you do teach, I mean, I taught for 15 years, and sometimes you walk into a classroom and you may not even say anything, but you'll be able to pick up the children that maybe haven't had breakfast in the morning. You'll be able to see the kid that's sleeping in the room, you know, or that looks tired. You'd be able to see the kid that's hyper excited. So you'll be able to spot all these different personalities. And I feel that's important to know that we do address people differently and we do address students differently. And I know I'm kind of coming away from this whole idea of let's treat everybody the same, because I was toying with that idea over in my head, and I'm thinking actually sometimes you have to tailor with everyone's needs, and some people need more needs than others within the classroom. So it's working that out. So coming back to the link to that communication, it's being emotionally intelligent and being aware of biases and being aware of your own bias. Because I think since doing this work, when I do unconscious bias workshops, what I've realized is a lot of people aren't aware of their own biases because they're used to their environment, and what's comfortable in their environment is the norm. So it's coming away from your norm and stepping outside of your norm and looking through things in a different lens. So for example, sometimes we can be in our own bubble because life may be good in your world or my world, it may be good. And sometimes you walk into another space and somebody else is addressing something in a different way because they're looking at things through a different lens. So it's being able to look at things through a different lens. I think that's really what unconscious bias is really about, being able to do that.
You know, as a leader or as a teacher, how do you get to that point where you slow down and can step back and recognize that you may be stepping into bias and slow things down? Because I mean, that's really the crux of it, is having enough consciousness to recognize that you're being biased. What
Yes.
suggestions do you have?
Oh, yeah. And, it's not easy. First of all, I can say it's not easy because sometimes, I feel teaching is one of the hardest jobs. And sometimes you're just taken so much with what you've got to do. There's so much on the timetable that you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of in a rat race, really. So I think one thing is sometimes I know for me, a student can do it for you. Sometimes a student may ask you something or may say something, and that may trigger a response for you. And then you have to check yourself. Normally, people learn about their biases when something's gone wrong, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
which is not, which is not ideal. From a perspective of what you can do, I love meditation. So for me, meditation is really important, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of clarity of mind. I know you can't sometimes when you're at school, it's not about meditation, but it's finding mindful moments. So when you finish that lesson, or even when you're in that lesson, if you have a moment just to be quiet and observe the lesson, observe the children in front of you, observe the behavior, and then also checking your bias as well, because I said you don't recognize you've got that bias until you look at something through a different lens. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a quite hard question, because you have to pinpoint that, but you have to recognize that you've got that bias first of all. And a lot of people don't recognize their own biases because it's an everyday thing. And sometimes it's not brought to your attention until somebody else brings it to your attention. And I suppose it's just being aware when someone else maybe be saying something to you from a different lens, just to listen rather than judge, because we always go into judgment and defense. So it's important to be an active listener and to ask open questions as
Mm-hmm.
well. Because if you ask open questions, you're allowing space for that person to explore different responses rather than ask direct questions, because direct questions can sometimes be a very defensive as well. And we tend
Yes.
to do that in the teaching world. We tend to ask very direct questions, but actually, if we ask more open questions, a bit like counselling, you ask more open questions, you're allowing that space for someone to explore their answers. And then you're getting an insight into that person's world a little bit more. And you probably get less defense in a response from the student. Like, for example, kids going through puberty, the emotional intelligence is generally low. And that's what actually happens. That's a fact. So it's actually stepping back a little bit, recognizing where they're coming from and
Mm-hmm.
coming away from yourself. Because sometimes we're the adults here, aren't we? But sometimes I've seen teachers do it where they get defensive, they get in their own space, and it's about their stuff, and they're not seeing what's happening in front of them because they're in their space and they're in their stuff and they're in their judgmental space, let's say. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's lots of those things really. Some coming back and actually giving them space to listen to them actively and just check and think, I wonder what this child's actually going through, why they're behaving this way. Because with behavior, kids don't play up unless something's really going on. And if we
Mm-hmm.
pull back the onions, there's always something going on for that child that's normally behaving badly. There's always something. So it's getting to the root of that rather than getting on the defense. And I think that's the issue here a lot
I
of the
love the
times.
idea that you're talking about open questions and active listening. For me, that's all about being curious. In a
Mm,
situation, I I often believe that if as adults we were more curious about the situations that were happening around us, we could, like you said, peel back the onion and understand a little bit more, which really then is a reflection of how we respond to situations, not how we expect other people to respond.
mm,
um, really getting to that idea of where we do have bias. Because like you said, and it is, everybody has bias. It is a natural part. It is about being human, but we also should be curious as humans so that we can
yes.
understand what's happening around us.
Mm,
Um, yes, adults need to be the adults in the room when working with
yeah.
kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. So, I mean, talking about professional development, and this is something that you can help schools with in Minnesota or really anywhere, whether it's a Londoner as yourself or back in Minnesota, as I'm going to really emphasize there, Minnesota. How can professional development and training programs help us uncover or overcome unconscious bias in our teaching practices, or maybe even our leadership roles?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, I have a training program which I think works really well, first of all. But it could help anyone in anything really, because just uncovering your bias is huge. I
Mm-hmm.
feel it's actually life-changing. I feel it's life-changing for a lot of people. So in terms of CPD, in terms of career professional development, I think it is key, because it's just like self-development, or relationships. It will improve relationships
Mm-hmm.
with your work colleagues. It will improve relationships with your students. It will give you a deeper understanding of the differences in the cultures, that because by being curious with the
Mm-hmm.
unconscious bias training, you may ask more questions, and you may ask questions in a different way. To some people ask questions, as I said, but they ask very direct questions, and when you ask very direct questions, you get a lot of defense.
Mm-hmm.
But if and also tone of voice, all that sort of thing. But when you start asking curious questions about cultures you don't understand, about situations you don't understand, and you admit that you don't understand as well,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like sometimes within teaching professions, or even with the whole situation between student and teacher, sometimes the issue is that the teacher will not admit to not knowing. The teacher always feels they have to know everything. And sometimes we can learn from our students, especially when we're looking at that cultural difference, or we're looking at something that they're exploring. Because I haven't learned from my kids in terms of technology. I'm terrible at technology.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're vulnerable, that really improves the relationship. So I would say, in terms of helping senior leaders, it's going to help them to connect in a deeper way. And also they're going to gain more respect, because when you start asking those questions and you start connecting and you're curious,
Mm-hmm.
you develop a better relationship. Because when someone feels acknowledged, and over here we call it positive praise, when you get positive praise, you feel acknowledged, whether it is your work colleague or whether it is your student, you're going to develop those relationships that it's going to be like long lasting. So when you feel acknowledged, you're going to perform better.
Mm-hmm.
So your grades are going to get higher. There's going to be a deeper understanding. So everything's going to improve. It's a no-brainer, really.
And
As you would say in the States, it's a no-brainer.
a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And of course, this is not limited to just teachers and senior leaders in schools. This is a human skill that, if we are going to get better and understanding different cultures, and as our world becomes smaller, as they say, and we become more connected. I mean, like today, I'm talking to you in London, which it is about 5:27-ish in the evening. This is crazy that we get to just talk like this across
Yeah.
the ocean. We have to have this idea of being curious and asking questions. I asked you earlier today, before we started recording, posh. How do I speak posh? And that is a curious question, and I need to speak slowly and intentionally, is what I have come to understand. So I'm gonna totally use that going forward over here in Minnesota. I'm gonna be posh. Um,
Oh dear.
I really love what you bring to the table, and I really hope that we can figure out um, how as humans, again, that we have to keep being curious and keep uncovering these biases, so that we get to a place where we can see each other and listen to each other and be an active listener. And I think that just helps us all be better. But it's not, like I said, it's not just teachers, it's not just senior leaders. This is for parents. This is for our whole communities, really.
Definitely.
It's not just relegated to just our school communities.
Mm.
So we're going to move forward. I think that's a great snippet of how Tanya can help bring some training and some professional development into our schools and help us be better. I'm going to change to a different section right now, and we're talking about communication. So I don't know if you picked it up on it earlier, but Tanya is a self-proclaimed communication doctor, which I love that term because it's about being good listeners and good speakers. So let's talk about communication here for a second. We are across the ocean from each other. I'm going to play a little game with you right now, Tanya, and see if I'm going to give you from what I understand is a British or English term for something. Let's see if you can come up with the American term for it.
Oh, that's good. This might be difficult.
This might be difficult. I'm glad I'm on this side. I'm glad I'm asking the questions today. So, pavement, and I may have some of these wrong. So, if I'm in London and I'm walking on the pavement, that's one thing. If you're in Minnesota walking on the pavement, we may call it
I don't know, the pavement.
Oh, maybe I have it wrong.
Because if you're walking on the pavement, and the road is where people drive.
Here we would be walking on a sidewalk.
Oh, the side, of course, the sidewalk. I'm thinking about the track. I'm thinking about music now. Sidewalk, of course.
Sidewalk.
Okay.
Okay. Now this one I should have started with. I should have started with an easier one. Okay, here's the next one. If I'm in London, I'm going to eat chips.
Yeah.
But those chips are not the same here. If I'm eating chips here, it's something different. Chips in London would be what in the States?
In the States, I suppose chips in London. Oh gosh, in the States, are they? I don't know. Fries.
Fries. French fries is what we call them. French fries.
Did I feel like the pressure here?
Yes. Fully understand.
Fries, it is fries. I'm there having to think of McDonald's now. I had to think of McDonald's, you know. Fries, yeah, fries rather than chips.
Okay,
yeah.
On your feet. Here we're walking around, we're wearing sneakers or tennis shoes. What are you wearing?
Well, actually, we've become a little bit more Americanized now because I think it's since the COVID, because I've noticed people going into work. Before you'd just wear shoes to work, but I've noticed people are starting to wear trainers. We call them
trainers is what I was.
Yeah.
Trainers is the correct answer. I wish I had a sound effect right now, like a ding, 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 ding. If your car breaks down, Tanya, we would open the hood of our car. You would open the
bonnet.
The bonnet, and that one was crazy to me. The bonnet, because I think of a bonnet as like this thing that you put around your head.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this one because we're talking about kids. Candy floss. In the States, we call it. Let's see if you can get this one.
What's candy floss in the? Oh gosh. Oh, I don't know, because I'm actually thinking about when you go to the fairgrounds and you've got
Go
the
to the
candy
fair.
floss.
Yep, candy floss is like puffy candy around like a stick.
Okay,
we call it just cotton candy.
Cotton. You know what? I didn't know that. I've just learned that cotton candy. I didn't know that one at all. Okay, cotton candy. I've learned something new.
All right, I love this one because in Minnesota we have a lot of trucks. Lots of trucks. People love their trucks in Minnesota. If you have a truck in London, what is it called?
A lorry.
A lorry. I have no idea what. If you would have said that to me, I would have failed greatly on that one. But in your truck, if you're going to be driving in your truck, we say we need some gasoline, and you say
we need some fuel.
Fuel.
Yeah.
Fuel.
Yeah.
Cookies. This is one where we would get in trouble because I'd be like, you would say, I would say, Tanya, would you like a cookie? Or if I was there, what would you offer me? A
biscuit.
A biscuit.
Yeah.
And here, a biscuit is not a cookie. A biscuit is a small piece of bread that you put gravy on, or you put something in it. So again, you have to be curious, right? All right, last one. In England, if you are not at work, you are away, you are on a
vacation.
Oh, you say vacation. I was
Or
wondering if
holiday, sorry, holiday or vacation, holiday. So
holiday.
say holiday. Yeah. I think we're catching up now. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of influence. I think it's quite interesting because there is a lot of American influence now with, and I think it's a generational thing. I think there's a lot of American influence because even the whole thing of drinking coffee has become very much the thing now. Whereas when I
What?
was growing up,
Tea?
it wasn't. Yeah, it was more about tea when I was growing up. But now I'm showing a bit of my age now. But now everybody drinks coffee because you've got Starbucks, Costa, all of that. So I think the American culture has very much influenced this country in lots of ways. So maybe if I was, say, 20 years younger, I would have said cookies, not biscuits.
Well, I love it. I love it. And this really brings us this really brings us back to our original point here, which is about communication and bias, right? And you know, in this situation, we have different words for things, we have different culture, we have different backgrounds, and we have a chance to respond to that with curiosity or bias, right? Where I would be like, why don't you call it a cookie? That's a different statement. That's a different question than what do you call a cookie?
Yeah.
You know,
most definitely.
And I think we have to search for the similarities in how we are all human and really peel back the onion, as you said. It's a no-brainer, right, Tanya? It's a no-brainer. Call to action for our listeners today. Before we wrap up, do you have any advice or call to action for those that are watching and or listening to TalentED with Tanya today?
I think a call to action is to actually be a little bit more empathetic, have a little bit more empathy. I think that's really important moving forward, and to check ourselves, step back from situations. And if we feel that we're being very judgmental, because I think we know we're being judgmental, but sometimes we have to step back, kind of question, where's that judgment come from? Because sometimes it may have come from the home, it may have come from something mum and dad may have said, it may have come from the community, and then maybe just kind of test that judgment as well and think, okay, I wonder if that judgment is going to really affect someone else. So yeah, I think that's a call to action really in terms of just checking oneself.
Empathy. I love it. All right, everybody, that is going to make it a wrap. And I want to thank Tanya for coming on with us today. She has been an incredible guest and she is an incredible resource. And we can all learn a little bit from Tanya if we had the chance. So thank you for tuning into this episode of TalentED. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review. And if you have any suggestions or future topics or guests, please let us know in the comments. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and stay PKS, which is positive, kind, and supportive. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.